the ship was small. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Among the massive cruisers and golden battleships that filled the space around planet Threll, the human vessel looked like a toy. It was gray and simple, with no decorations, no weapons that could be seen, and no impressive lights. Inside the ship, Taiho stood by the window and watched the alien world grow larger. He was 32 years old, with tired eyes and steady hands. Behind him stood his small team of 5 humans. They were the first from Earth to ever travel this far into space. "Sir," said his assistant, a young woman named Jiwan, "they're ready to receive us." Taiho nodded slowly. He had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. Earth had discovered faster-than-light travel only 20 years ago. Since then, humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe. Far from it. The galaxy was full of life, and at the center of it all sat the Dominion of Threll, an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. Today, humanity would ask for a place among the stars. The shuttle carried them down to the surface. Threll was beautiful in a cold way. The buildings were tall and made of crystal that caught the light of 3 suns. Everything was huge, built for beings much larger than humans. Taiho felt very small as he walked through the halls of the Great Assembly. Aliens of every shape and size filled the corridors. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in the air or walked on dozens of legs. Many of them stopped to stare at the humans. Taiho heard whispers in languages he did not understand, but he could guess what they were saying. The translators in his ear caught some of it, so small. Are those the new ones? From the young planet? They look like food. Taiho kept his face calm. He had been warned about this. Humanity was new. Humanity was weak. That was what everyone believed. The Great Assembly Hall was the largest room Taiho had ever seen. It stretched up so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat representatives from across the galaxy. Every species that mattered was here, and at the very top, on a throne made of living crystal, sat Emperor Vorak. Vorak was massive. His body was covered in dark blue armor that seemed to grow from his skin. He had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, and each one gleamed with ancient intelligence. His species, the Threll, had conquered half the galaxy before most other races had learned to make fire. He had ruled for 300 years, and would rule for 300 more. Taiho walked to the center of the platform. The room fell silent. Millions of eyes watched the small human in his simple black uniform. "Speak," said Vorak. His voice was deep and echoed through the hall without any need for machines. Taiho bowed low. "Great Emperor. Honored members of the Assembly, I am Taiho, representative of Earth and the United Human Coalition. We come in peace. We come with respect. We come to ask for one thing only." He paused and looked up at the countless faces watching him. "We ask for a seat in this assembly, a voice among the stars. We know we are young. We know we are small. But we believe that every species deserves a chance to be heard." Silence followed his words. Then, slowly, the laughter began. It started from the lower seats, where the lesser species sat. Then it spread upward, growing louder and louder. Soon the entire hall was laughing. The sound was deafening. Aliens of every kind pointed at Taiho and his small team. Some laughed so hard they could barely breathe. Admiral Krev, the Emperor's right hand, rose from his seat near the throne. He was a Threll like Vorak, but smaller and covered in battle scars. His voice cut through the laughter. "A seat? You want a seat?" He laughed again. "Little creature, do you know where you are? This assembly has existed for 8,000 years. Species must prove themselves worthy to sit here. They must show strength, power, achievement." He walked down toward Taiho, his heavy feet shaking the platform. "What have humans achieved? You discovered space travel yesterday. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. Your bodies are soft and break easily. You live for what, 80 years? 90? He leaned close to Taiho. I have armor older than your entire civilization." More laughter filled the hall. Krev turned to address the crowd. "I have seen the reports on these humans. They fight among themselves constantly. They destroy their own planet. They cannot even agree on simple things. And they want to sit among us." He looked back at Tai-Ho with something like pity. "Go home, little one. Play with your rockets and your dreams. Perhaps in 10,000 years, if your species still exists, you can come back and ask again. Until then, you are nothing. Less than nothing. You are a joke." The Emperor raised one massive hand, and the hall fell silent. "The human request is denied," Vorak said. His 6 eyes studied Tai-Ho with mild curiosity, like a child looking at an insect. "You are not worthy of a seat. You are not worthy of our attention. Return to your small world and be grateful that we allow you to exist." Tai-Ho stood very still. His team behind him was shaking with anger and shame, but Tai-Ho's face showed nothing. He had expected this. He had prepared for this. He bowed again, low and respectful. "Thank you, great Emperor, for your time. We will remember this day." Something in his voice made Vorak pause. For just a moment, one of his 6 eyes narrowed. But then the moment passed, and the Emperor waved his hand in dismissal. Tai-Ho walked out of the hall with his team. The laughter followed them all the way to their ship. Aliens threw things at them. Some spat. Others simply pointed and mocked. Jiwan was crying by the time they reached the shuttle. "How can you be so calm?" she demanded. "They treated us like animals. Like nothing." Tai-Ho waited until the shuttle doors closed. Then, finally, he allowed himself a small smile. "Good," he said softly. "They do not see us as a threat. They do not fear us. They will not watch us." He looked out the window as Threll grew smaller behind them. "Remember everything you saw today, Juwan? Remember every laugh? Every insult? Remember how small they made us feel? Because one day, we are going to make them remember too." The ship turned toward Earth. The humans were going home. But they were not defeated. They were just getting started. 20 years passed like a whisper. The galaxy forgot about the humans. There were wars to fight, empires to manage, and trade routes to control. The little species from the little blue planet was not worth remembering. They were a joke told at parties, nothing more. But on Earth, no one was laughing. They were working. Tai-Ho had returned from Threll with fire in his heart. He stood before the leaders of every nation and played them the recording of that day. He showed them the laughter. He showed them Admiral Krev, calling them livestock. He showed them Emperor Vorak, dismissing them like insects. "They think we are nothing," Tai-Ho said. "Let us show them what nothing can become." For the first time in human history, every nation agreed. The United Human Coalition became more than just a name. It became a promise. Every resource, every mind, every effort was pointed toward one goal, the stars. Captain Yuna was one of the first to answer the call. She was 30 years old when she took command of the UHC Defiance, one of humanity's new exploration vessels. The ship was fast, much faster than it looked. Human engineers had spent years studying the technology they had seen on Threll, and they had found ways to make it better. Yuna led the first wave of human expansion into unclaimed space. The Dominion and other empires had ignored these regions. The planets were too harsh, too cold, too hot, or too far from useful resources. No sensible species would want them. But humans were not always sensible. They were stubborn. Yuna landed on a frozen world called Koro 7. The temperature was so cold that metal could crack. The Dominion had marked it as useless and moved on. 3 years later, Koro 7 had a population of 50,000 humans. They had built heated domes, underground farms, and mining operations that pulled rare metals from the ice. The planet that no one wanted became one of humanity's most valuable colonies. This pattern repeated across the stars. Humans settled on burning desert worlds and built cities that hid from the sun. They colonized gas giant moons and asteroid fields. They made homes in places that other species had declared impossible, and they did it quietly. While Yuna expanded human territory, Others worked on different problems. Dr. Wan was one of them. Wan was a physicist. Small and quiet, with glasses that were always dirty. He had been a professor before the Coalition called him to a secret research station on the dark side of the moon. There, with a team of the brightest minds on Earth, he worked on something that the Dominion said could not be done. Dimensional folding. The Dominion used faster-than-light engines that bent space around a ship. It was fast, but it had limits. Ships could only travel certain paths, certain routes. The Dominion had mapped these routes over thousands of years and controlled them completely, but dimensional folding was different. It did not bend space. It cut through it. A ship using this technology could travel anywhere instantly, without using the established routes. The Dominion had declared this impossible 5,000 years ago. Their greatest scientists had tried and failed. The mathematics did not work, they said. The energy requirements were too high. It could not be done. Wan did not care what they said. He only cared about what was true after 12 years of failure, 12 years of explosions and setbacks, and our death experiences. Wan stood in his laboratory and watched a small metal cube disappear from one end of the room and appear at the other. He had done it within 2 years. Human ships were equipped with fold drives. They could now travel faster than anything in the galaxy. They could appear anywhere at any time, without warning. The Dominion still did not notice. General Seogen made sure of that. Seogen was a soldier, hard and serious, with a face that rarely smiled. He had fought in Earth's last great war before the Coalition united the planet. He knew what battle looked like, and he knew that humanity was not ready to fight the Dominion directly. Not yet. So he trained an army in secret. He built bases on hidden moons and trained soldiers in ways the galaxy had never seen. Human soldiers learned to fight in every environment, against every type of enemy. They studied the tactics of 100 alien species and found weaknesses that others had missed. But Seogen's greatest weapon was not strength or speed. It was something the Dominion did not understand. Humans were willing to sacrifice in the Dominion. Soldiers fought for glory and honor. They would retreat before dying uselessly, value their lives above victory. This was considered wise and civilized. Humans were different. Humans would hold a position until the last breath. Humans would crash their ships into enemy bases if it meant saving their friends. Humans would die to protect strangers they had never met. Seogen knew this was humanity's greatest advantage. Dominion would never understand it until it was too late. While the military grew, others worked on a different kind of weapon: friendship. Throughout the galaxy, there were species that the Dominion had conquered and enslaved. They worked in mines and factories, building the wealth of their masters. They had no voice, no hope, and no future. Human agents found them. A young woman named Nari led these efforts. She had grown up on the streets of Seoul, an orphan with nothing. The Coalition had found her and trained her for intelligence work. She had a gift for languages and an even greater gift for making people trust her. Nari traveled to 100 worlds. Always in disguise, always in secret. She found the enslaved and the oppressed. She told them about Earth. She told them about humans who had been laughed at and dismissed. She told them that change was coming. The Dominion thinks it will rule forever, she would say. But nothing lasts forever. When the time comes, will you be ready to fight for your freedom? Most said yes. 20 years after Taiho's humiliation, humanity controlled over 200 star systems. They had the fastest ships in the galaxy, an army of dedicated soldiers and allies in every corner of Dominion space. A Dominion scout finally sent a report to Threll. Admiral Krev read it with confusion. The humans had expanded far beyond what anyone expected. Their technology seemed advanced. Their military seemed organized. He brought the report to Emperor Vorok. The Emperor barely looked at it. "Let them play at Empire," he said with a wave of his hand. Young species always grow excited when they discover space. Expand too fast, stretch too thin. Within a generation, they will collapse. They always do. Krev was not so sure, but he said nothing. The Emperor had ruled for 300 years. Surely he knew best. On Earth, Taiho received word that the Dominion had noticed their expansion. He was 52 now, his hair gray at the edges, but his eyes still burned with the same fire. He stood in the Coalition war room, surrounded by screens showing human fleets spread across the stars. "They have seen us," he said. "They will come soon." General Seojin nodded. "We are ready." Dr. Wan pushed his dirty glasses up his nose. "The new weapons are finished." Captain Yuna, now an admiral herself, smiled grimly. "Let them come. This time, we will not bow." Taiho looked at the map of human space, so much larger than anyone had expected. 20 years ago, they laughed at us, he said. Soon, they will learn what that laughter cost them. The quiet rise was over. The storm was about to begin. Admiral Krev stood on the bridge of his flagship, the burning sky, and smiled. Behind him stretched the Third Fleet of the Dominion, 10,000 warships that blocked out the stars. Each ship was massive, covered in weapons that had destroyed civilizations. This fleet had never lost a battle in 2,000 years. Today, they would crush the humans once and for all. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, "we are approaching Vorn Prime. The human fleet is waiting. How many ships?" 300, sir," Krev laughed. The sound echoed across the bridge. His officers joined in, their voices mixing into a chorus of mockery. 300 against 10,000, Krev said. "Now, these humans truly are fools. They do not even know how to surrender properly." He remembered the young human who had stood before the assembly 20 years ago. Taiho, that was his name. He had bowed so politely, asked so humbly for a seat. Krev had almost felt sorry for the creature. "Almost open a channel to the human fleet," Krev ordered. "Let us give them one chance to run." The screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, young and calm. His name was Minho, and he wore the uniform of a coalition commander. His eyes showed no fear. "Human," Krev said, "you are outnumbered 30 to 1. Your ships are small, your weapons are weak, and your species is young. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Fight, and I will burn your worlds for 1,000 years, Commander." Minho tilted his head slightly, as if considering the offer. Then he smiled. "Admiral Krev," he said, "I remember you. You called us livestock once. You said we were nothing." He leaned forward. "Today we are going to teach you a new word. Today you will learn what humans mean when we say no." The channel closed. Krev felt a small flicker of annoyance. The human's confidence was irritating. Did he not understand what he faced? The Third Fleet had destroyed empires. These 300 tiny ships would be gone in minutes. "All ships," Krev commanded. "Attack formation. Let us end this quickly. I want to be home for the evening meal." 10,000 warships moved forward, their weapons charged, filling space with the hum of enough power to crack a planet. The Dominion had perfected these weapons over 5,000 years. Nothing could stand against them. The human ships did not move. They hung in space like sitting targets, arranged in a strange formation that Krev did not recognize. "Fire," Krev said. The Third Fleet unleashed everything. Beams of burning light, missiles that carried the force of small suns, waves of energy that could melt metal from 1,000 miles away. The attack was beautiful in its destruction. A wall of death that rolled toward the human fleet. It struck the human ships, and nothing happened. Krev blinked. On his screen, the human ships still floated peacefully. The attacks had hit them. He had seen it, but the ships were undamaged. It was impossible. "Report," he shouted. "Double quotes, sir. Our weapons are not penetrating. They have some kind of shield we have never seen. Our energy readings show the attacks being absorbed and redirected." Krev felt the first cold touch of fear. Increased power. "All ships, maximum firepower." Again, the fleet fired. Again, the humans absorbed everything without a scratch. The shields around their ships glowed softly, almost peacefully, drinking in destruction like water. Then the humans fired back. Commander Minho gave a single order from his bridge. "Light them up." Out. The beams were not like anything the Dominion used. They were focused differently, tuned to frequencies that the Dominion shields could not block. They did not just destroy, they learned. The first volley killed 100 Dominion ships, the second killed 200 more. By the third volley, the human weapons had analyzed the Dominion shield patterns and adjusted. Dominion ships began exploding by the thousand. On the burning sky, alarms screamed. Officers ran in panic. Krev stood frozen, watching his fleet die. "How?" he whispered. "This is not possible." 20 years humanity had not just copied Dominion technology. They had studied it, understood it, and found its weaknesses. Every weapon, every shield, every system the Dominion used was based on designs that were 5,000 years old. The Dominion had never needed to improve. It never faced anyone who could challenge them until now. The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of fire and death and screaming metal. 6 hours of the impossible becoming real. When it ended, the Third Fleet was gone. 10,000 ships reduced to floating wreckage. The greatest military force the Dominion had ever sent to battle, destroyed by a fleet 1/30th its size. Admiral Krev's flagship was crippled, but not destroyed. Human boarding ships attached to its hull, and soldiers in sealed armor cut through the doors. They moved with perfect coordination, clearing room after room without losing a single fighter. General Sayajin led the team that found Krev hiding in his private quarters. The admiral looked old now, his confidence gone. He stared at the human soldiers with their strange weapons and their steady eyes. "What are you?" he asked. Seo Jun did not answer. He simply nodded to his soldiers, and they put Krev in restraints. Across the battlefield, Commander Minho sent a message to Earth. It was short. Battle of Vorn Prime complete. Enemy fleet destroyed. Human losses, 17 ships. Preparing to transfer prisoners. The war has begun. On Earth, Taiho received the message in the Coalition war room. Around him, officers and leaders watched in stunned silence. 17 ships lost out of 300. The Third Fleet, the pride of the Dominion, completely destroyed. "Send word to all our allies," Taiho said quietly. "Tell them it is time. Tell them the Dominion can be beaten." The message spread like fire across the galaxy. Enslaved species heard it in their mines and factories. Conquered worlds heard it in their prisons and camps. The Dominion, the great Dominion that had ruled for 10,000 years, had been defeated by humans, the joke species, the nothing species. The creatures that Admiral Krev had once called livestock. On a dozen worlds, rebellions began. Slaves rose against their masters. Conquered people found courage they had forgotten they had. The name human became a symbol of hope. Captain Yuna led the next attack, striking at a Dominion supply line that fed their inner worlds. Dr. Wan's fold drives allowed her ships to appear without warning, destroy their targets, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Dominion tried to respond. They sent more fleets, more soldiers, more ships. But the humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck and disappeared. They freed slaves and armed rebels. They turned the Dominion's own cruelty against it. Admiral Krev was brought to the new Human Alliance Senate, where representatives from Earth and a dozen freed species waited. He was not harmed. He was not tortured. He was simply made to watch as the Alliance announced its existence to the galaxy. Ambassador Juwan, now a leader in her own right, spoke to the cameras. For 10,000 years, the Dominion has ruled through fear. They told the galaxy that resistance was impossible. They laughed at anyone who dreamed of freedom. She paused, her eyes hard. Today we tell the galaxy the truth. The Dominion is not invincible. They can be beaten. They can be broken. And together we will free every world they have chained. Krev watched with empty eyes. He had laughed at humans once. He had called them nothing. Now he understood. Humans were not nothing. They were patient. They were clever. They were willing to work and wait and sacrifice in ways the Dominion could never understand, and they did not forget back on Threll. Emperor Vorak received news of the Third Fleet's destruction. For the first time in 300 years, he felt something he did not recognize, fear. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. "Many, great Emperor. But the humans have allies now. The slaves are rising. Our outer territories are in chaos. Vorak sat on his crystal throne and stared at the map of his empire. Red lights blinked everywhere, marking battles and rebellions and lost systems. The humans were coming. And this time, no one was laughing. The next 10 years burned across the galaxy like wildfire. General Isujin stood on the surface of a world called Torek 4, watching his soldiers raise the flag of the Alliance of Free Worlds. Behind him, the ruins of a Dominion fortress still smoked. The battle had been hard, but short. The Dominion garrison had fought with desperation, knowing that surrender meant the end of everything they believed in. They had lost anyway. This was the 47th world Seojin had liberated. Each one followed the same pattern. Human forces would appear from nowhere, their fold drives making them ghosts that could strike anywhere. Local slaves and rebels would rise up to join the attack. The Dominion defenders, confused and surrounded, would fall, and then the real work would begin. Seijin walked through the streets of the planet's main city. Aliens of 3 different species lined the roads, watching him with eyes that held a mixture of fear and hope. They had been slaves here for hundreds of years. Their grandparents had been slaves. Their grandparents' grandparents had been slaves. Freedom was a word from old stories, nothing more. A young alien child stepped forward, trembling. She held out a small flower, purple and strange, her hands shaking. Seo Jian knelt down so they were face to face. He did not smile often, but he smiled now. He took the flower gently. "Thank you," he said in her language. His translation device helped, but he had learned to say this phrase himself. It meant more that way. "Are you really human?" the child asked. "Yes." The masters said humans were monsters. "They said you eat children." Seojin shook his head. "The masters said many things that were not true. That is why we are here. To show you the truth." He stood and addressed the crowd. "You are free now. The Alliance will help you rebuild. You will choose your own leaders. You will make your own laws. No one will own you ever again." Some cheered. Some simply stood in silence, unable to believe that 10,000 years of chains had finally ended. This scene repeated across hundreds of worlds. The Alliance of Free Worlds grew from a small rebellion into a true galactic power. Species that had been enemies for centuries now fought side by side against the Dominion. Old hatreds were set aside. Old wounds were forgiven. They had a common enemy, and they had a common hope. Humanity led them, but did not rule them. Ambassador Giwan made sure of that. She traveled constantly, meeting with leaders of every freed species. She listened more than she spoke. She learned their histories, their fears, their dreams. "We are not here to replace the Dominion," she told the Alliance Council in a speech that was broadcast to 1 billion worlds. "We are not here to build a new empire with humans at the top. We are here to create something that has never existed before. A galaxy where every species has a voice. Where the strong protect the weak. Where no one is laughed at for dreaming of the stars." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the council chamber. Representatives from over 200 species watched her. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no bodies at all, existing as pure energy. All of them had known what it meant to be conquered, to be mocked, to be told they were nothing. "I know what it feels like to be small," Giwan continued. "I stood in the great assembly of Threll when I was young. I heard them laugh at humanity. I heard them call us insects. I felt the shame and the anger." Her voice hardened. "But I also felt something else. I felt determination. I promised myself that one day things would be different." She raised her hand toward the gathered representatives. "Look around you. Things are different. We made them different. Together." The council chamber exploded in cheers that shook the walls. On Threll, Emperor Vorak watched the broadcast in his throne room. He sat alone now. His advisors had fled or been killed. His admirals had failed him one after another. His council whispered about surrender behind his back. He was 600 years old. And for the first time in his long life, he did not know what to do. The map of his empire told the story. 10 years ago, the Dominion had controlled 3,000 star systems. Now, less than 500 remained. Human fleets pressed inward from every direction. The alliance grew stronger every day, while the Dominion grew weaker. Vorak summoned his last loyal servants. "We must kill their leaders," he said. "Without the humans who guide them, the alliance will fall apart. Send the Shadow Guard. Kill Taiho. Kill their generals. Kill their ambassador. Kill them all." The Shadow Guard was the Dominion's most secret weapon. Assassins who had been trained from birth to kill. They had never failed a mission. They could slip through any security, strike any target, vanish without a trace. 12 of them were sent to different alliance worlds with orders to eliminate the human leadership. None of them returned. Nari had been waiting for them. Former street orphan had built the alliance intelligence service from nothing. She had agents on every world, eyes in every shadow. She knew the Shadow Guard was coming before they left Threll. One by one, she found them. Some she captured. Some she turned to the Alliance cause, showing them the truth about the empire they served. A few she had to kill when capture was impossible. The last assassin, female Threll named Veka, sat across from Nari in a small room on the edge of Alliance space. Veka's weapons had been taken. Her hands were bound, but her 6 eyes still burned with defiance. "You cannot win," Veka said. "The Emperor is eternal. The Dominion is eternal." Nari leaned back in her chair. "The Emperor has ruled for 300 years. That is a long time. But 10,000 years ago, there was a different Emperor. And 10,000 years before that, another. Empires rise. Empires fall. Nothing is eternal. We have never fallen. We have never been defeated. You had never fought humans." Nari smiled. "Tell me, Veka, in your training, did they teach you about human history? About our wars? About what we did to each other before we reached the stars?" Veka said nothing. "We are not a peaceful species," Nari continued. "We learned to fight in the mud and blood of our own world. We fought each other for thousands of years. We got very good at it."
How?
She leaned forward. "The Dominion has had 10,000 years of easy victories. You forgot what a real war looks like. We never forgot." She stood and walked toward the door. "I'm going to give you a choice, Veka. You can remain a prisoner and spend the rest of your life in a cell. Or you can help us end this war. Help us free your own people from an emperor who would throw their lives away to save his throne." Veka was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, she spoke. "What do you want to know?" The information Veka provided opened the path to Threll itself. The final defenses of the Dominion capital. The location of the Emperor's private fleet. The weaknesses in the planetary shields. Taiho received the report in his command ship. He was 62 now, white-haired and tired. But his eyes still held the same fire they had held in the Great Assembly all those years ago. "Is it reliable?" he asked. Nari nodded. "She has no reason to lie. And we verified what we could." Taiho looked at the holographic map of Threll, the heart of the empire that had laughed at him, the world where he had been told humanity was nothing. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "Send word to all Alliance forces. It is time to end this." Admiral Yuna, now 70 years old, but still sharp as ever, smiled grimly. "I have waited 30 years for this order." Dr. Wan adjusted his glasses. "The new shield disruptors are ready. Their defenses will not hold." General Siajin straightened his uniform. "My ground forces can take the capital within hours of landing." Quan stepped forward. "The galaxy is watching. Whatever happens next, it will be remembered forever." Taiho nodded slowly. "Then let us make sure they remember it right. We did not come here for revenge. We came here for justice. When we reach Threll, we will offer them one chance to surrender. One chance to end this without more death." He looked at each of his old friends, the people who had built this moment from nothing. "But if they refuse, we will show them what humanity can do when we fight for something greater than ourselves." Alliance fleet began to move toward Threll. The final battle was coming. The sky above Threll burned. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship to remember the laughter and watch the final battle unfold. Around him, ships from 300 different species filled the void. Humans fought alongside beings they had never imagined existed 30 years ago. Former slaves flew beside former enemies. The galaxy had united against the Dominion. And now that unity would be tested one last time, Emperor Vorak had gathered every ship he had left. 4,000 warships formed a wall around his homeworld, their weapons charged and ready. Among them flew his personal flagship, the Eternal Throne, the largest and most powerful vessel ever built. Vorak's voice echoed through every channel. "This is our home. This is where our empire was born 10,000 years ago. You will not take it. You will die here, all of you, and the Dominion will rise again from your ashes." Taiho responded calmly. "Emperor Vorak, this is your last chance. Surrender now, and we will spare your people. Continue fighting, and we will do what we must. The choice is yours." A silence. Then Vorak laughed, the same mocking laugh that Taiho remembered from the Great Assembly.
Ow.
"You still talk like the small creature who begged for a seat at our table? You were nothing then. You are nothing now. Come and die, human. Come and learn your place." Taiho closed the channel. He turned to Admiral Yuna, who stood beside him, her gray hair pulled back tight. "Light him up," he said. The Battle of Threll lasted 12 hours. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships by the thousands clashed in the darkness, their weapons painting the void with fire. The Dominion fought with desperate fury, knowing this was their last stand. The Alliance fought with hope. Knowing this was the end of 10,000 years of tyranny, Dr. Wan's final invention turned the tide. He called it the Silence Wave, a weapon that could disable shields across an entire fleet. When Yuna gave the order, a pulse spread outward from the Alliance flagship, and suddenly 4,000 Dominion ships were naked and vulnerable. The Alliance did not waste the moment. Commander Minho, now an admiral himself, led the first strike force. His ships cut through the Dominion line like a blade through paper. Behind him came Admiral Yuna's main fleet, targeting the command ships that coordinated the defense. One by one, the Dominion flagships fell. Their admirals surrendered or died. Their crews fled in escape pods or fought to the last breath. The wall around Threll cracked, then shattered, then collapsed entirely. Only the Eternal Throne remained. Emperor Vorak's personal flagship was massive, nearly the size of a small moon. Its weapons were devastating. Its shields, designed to resist even the Silence Wave, still held. Vorak stood on his bridge, surrounded by his most loyal guards, and screamed orders at his crew. "Fire! Fire everything! Kill them all!" The Eternal Throne unleashed its full power. Alliance ships died by the dozen. Admiral Yuna's flagship took a direct hit that killed half her crew. Commander Minho's ship was crippled, forcing him to evacuate, but the Alliance did not retreat. They pressed forward, pouring fire into the great ship, finding weaknesses, exploiting them. General Seojin led the boarding party, 50. Human soldiers in heavy armor cut through the hull of the Eternal Throne and entered its corridors. They moved fast and brutal, clearing resistance with practiced efficiency. Seojin himself led from the front, his weapon never stopping, his voice calm as he directed his troops. "Throne room is 3 levels up. The Emperor will have his guard with him. Expect heavy resistance." They found it. Vorak's personal guard, the finest warriors in the Dominion, stood in their path. These were soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They were bigger, stronger, had better armor than any human. It did not matter. The humans fought like nothing the guard had ever seen. They used tactics that made no sense, sacrificing themselves to create openings for their comrades. They threw themselves into danger without hesitation. They died smiling, knowing their death meant victory for their friends. Seojin lost 30 soldiers taking the throne room. When the doors finally fell, only 20 humans remained standing. Emperor Vorak sat alone on his throne. His guards were dead. His empire was falling. His ships were surrendering or burning. He looked at the human soldiers with something that might have been respect. "So," he said, "the insects have won." Seojin lowered his weapon. "We are not here to kill you. We are here to end the war. Surrender, and you will live. Vorak laughed bitterly. Live? As what? A prisoner. A trophy. He stood, his massive body towering over the humans. I have ruled for 300 years. I have conquered 1,000 worlds. I am the emperor of the Dominion. I do not surrender to livestock. He raised his hand, and a hidden weapon emerged from his throne. Before he could fire, 3 human soldiers shot him. Not to kill, but to disable. Vorak fell, wounded but alive. Siajin walked over and looked down at him. You are not the emperor anymore. You are just another war criminal waiting for justice. He turned to his remaining troops. Secure the ship. Signal the fleet. It is over. Hours later, Admiral Taiho walked through the streets of Threll's capital city. The fighting had stopped. Alliance soldiers kept the peace, while terrified citizens watched from their windows. This was the heart of the empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia. Now it belonged to the species they had mocked. Taiho walked alone into the great assembly hall, the same hall where he had stood 30 years ago, young and afraid and humiliated. The seats were empty now. The crystal throne still stood at the top, glowing softly in the dim light. He climbed the steps slowly. His knees hurt. His back ached. He was an old man who had given his life to this moment. He stood before the throne and placed his hand on its surface. It was warm and smooth, ancient beyond imagination. Whoever sat here could rule the galaxy. The power was his for the taking. The doors opened behind him. Yuna, Siajin, Huan, Jiwan, and Nari entered the hall. His oldest friends. The people who had made this victory possible. It is yours, Yuna said quietly. You earned it. We all did. Taiho was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No. He turned to face them. We did not fight this war to become what we destroyed. We did not sacrifice millions of lives to trade one empire for another. He looked back at the throne, then raised his hand and brought it down hard. The crystal cracked. He struck again and again until the throne shattered into 1,000 pieces, falling around him like rain. There will be no more emperors, Taiho said. There will be no more thrones. In its place, the Alliance of Free Worlds built something new. A great council chamber where representatives from every species would sit as equals. No one at the top, no one at the bottom. Every voice heard. Every people respected. Emperor Vorak lived to see it. He was tried for his crimes, not by humans, but by the species he had enslaved. They were not cruel. They were fair. He was sentenced to spend his remaining years helping rebuild the worlds he had destroyed. Watching the galaxy he had ruled learn to govern itself. The first meeting of the new Galactic Council was held on Threll. In the hall where the assembly had once gathered, where laughter had once echoed, now there was respectful silence as Ambassador Giwan rose to speak. 30 years ago, a young man stood in this room and asked for a seat. He was told he was nothing. He was told his people were insects, livestock, a joke. She paused, looking around at the thousands of representatives from hundreds of species. Today, that same man commands the fleet that freed the galaxy. And do you know what he did with his power? She smiled. He gave it away. He broke the throne and asked everyone to build something better together. That is what humanity is. Not conquerors. Not masters, partners, friends. A species that knows what it feels like to be small and chooses to make sure no one ever has to feel that way again. Taiho sat in the back of the chamber, watching. He did not want a seat at the front. He did not want statues or titles or glory. He wanted only to see the galaxy he had helped create. Giwan finished her speech with words that would be remembered for 10,000 years. We were laughed at once. Now, we laugh at no one. We remember what it felt like, and we will never let it happen again. Today, a new era begins. Not an era of empires, but an era of equals. Today, the stars belong to everyone. The chamber erupted in applause that lasted for hours. Outside, in the streets of Threll, humans and aliens walked together beneath unfamiliar stars. Children from 100 species played together, not knowing or caring about the wars their parents had fought. Old hatreds faded. New friendships formed. Taiho left the chamber quietly and found a small balcony overlooking the city. The three suns were setting, painting the crystal buildings in shades of gold and purple. Yuna found him there. "You should be inside, celebrating." "I am celebrating," he said. "In my own way." She stood beside him, watching the sunset. "Do you ever think about that day? When they laughed at us?" "Every day." He smiled faintly. "I hear it in my dreams sometimes. That laughter. It used to make me angry. Now it makes me sad." Sad? They could not imagine what we could become. They saw only what we were, small, weak, young. He shook his head. They never asked what we wanted, what we dreamed of, what we would sacrifice for. If they had, maybe things would have been different. Yuna nodded slowly. "Maybe, but things are different now. That is what matters." They stood together in silence as the suns disappeared below the horizon. Somewhere in the city, music began to play. Alien voices sang songs that humans had taught them. Human voices sang songs that aliens had taught them. The sounds mixed together into something new and beautiful. The galaxy had changed forever. The species that had been laughed at now stood at the center of history, not as rulers, but as examples, as proof that the small could become great, that the mocked could become honored, that nothing was ever truly nothing. Taiho closed his eyes and listened to the music. After all these years, it was finally home.